everybody. Welcome to Midlife Unmuted. I want to talk a little bit about my guest who is here with us today. I'm super excited because Regina Robinson is a globally recognized inner confidence curator, award winning international speaker, best selling author, and the visionary behind the Unstoppable Woman on the Move movement. With a mission to empower the women of faith in business, she helps them to unlock their confidence, amplify their voice, and live unstoppable lives with boldness, purpose, and power. So I am super excited and thrilled that I get a chance to introduce Regina Robinson to the show. When we talk about midlife unmuted, part of that is that we are bold, we are speaking confidently, we are probably at a more loud stage than ever before in our season of life. And so I want to bring her on right now. And Regina, welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, Tanya. I'm excited to be here, especially around the topic that we're talking about.
Yes, yes. And you know what? This is especially focused on you as someone who is a confidence builder and a woman of faith. And as I mentioned to you before we started recording, I was really intrigued by finding people who had unique backgrounds and experiences and asking questions that are really uniquely suited to you, but still focused on the idea of how we show up boldly on camera, and especially in this season, which is such a different season than maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago
Mm,
in our lives.
absolutely.
So, look, my first question for you is what's not in the bio? If people were reading your full bio, not even the little bitty, information I just gave just now, what is not there that you would want people to know about you?
Wow. That I'm just a woman who loves to live, laugh, and love out loud, unapologetically, who has a heart for God, who wants to show up as the greatest version of myself every day, learning, failing, falling, but most importantly, getting back up.
Okay. Okay. That's strong. That's some strong words right there. Were you always that person?
No. So for a long time, I was just like most women, that person who felt like I had to please everyone, who felt like I had to be who everyone else wanted me to be. And I wasn't happy because I wasn't being who I was. And
Mhm.
so about 10 years ago, God took me on a journey and I really had an opportunity to allow Him to purge me from the inside out. So I can become the version of me that I love, the version of me who I like to laugh about, because I got my own quirky things that I go through, right? And as we talk about in midlife now, I love those things even more about myself, right? Where I used to run from those things. Now I live loud, I'm bold about it, and I show up and I'm just unapologetic about who I am.
Okay. All right now. Let's talk about faith and confidence because you mentioned that you're a woman of faith. Your journey emphasizes the role of faith in building confidence. So, how has faith shaped your approach to empowering women in business and also to showing up on camera? How does
Wow.
that play a part?
I think before my confidence was around the world saying what confidence meant.
Mm,
Until I learned to stand in the confidence of what God proclaimed confidence was. And that was that we were all, as women, fearfully and wonderfully made.
mm,
And so when I've been able to stand in that level of confidence, then when the world starts to try and tear me down or shake me down, I'm unshakable because I already know that God says I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. And so God says that I have multiple gifts and talents. So whereas when the world says you should be in a box and you should only have one gift or you should only be great at one thing and not so many things, God says no, you can be great at all things as long as I'm before you, as long as I'm the one guiding you. And so I teach and coach women how to live in that same space. It's okay to be gifted in many things. It's okay to love yourself the way you are. It's okay to show up and not have it all together because you will never be perfect, right? And so the
mhm.
world says we have to show up only when we got it all together, but we will never have it all together. But one thing we can always stand on is that God says we are fearfully and wonderfully made. The problem is, do you believe it?
Mm. Look, okay. We're gonna pass the plate today. Because look, there are a lot of people that talk about confidence in different ways. Um, what I love about what you're bringing to the conversation is the idea that the confidence is unshakable. And as you talk about it, you talk about unstoppable, right? And I love that you're saying that it's not just about you leaning on yourself, but it's also about you leaning on your faith and consistently being strong even when you're not strong, even when you don't
Yes,
feel strong, right? So
even
I
when you
love
don't feel
that you're
strong.
yeah, I love that you're talking about that. Can you share the inspiration behind what you call the unstoppable woman on the move? And what is that movement about?
So God gave me that movement during my purging season, right? Because what unstoppable means to me, as I always tell women, it means you're unable to stop. Because you only stop if you decide to stop, right? And I'm always encouraging women that we are on just one chapter. Don't give up in that chapter. The next chapter could be amazing. The next chapter could be awesome. The next chapter could be bumpy too. The next
Mhm.
chapter could have some failures too. But that doesn't mean you stop at that chapter. You just prepare to write a new chapter because you have the power to change the story. You have the power to rewrite whatever it is. Stop putting a period where God says is just a comma. And a comma is just a pause. A period means stop. He has never told us to stop. Maybe pause and get ourselves together, have a reset or refresh, right? So that we can start again, especially how we say with the midlife thing. We're all women, as me as a midlife, because I'm 51. Sometimes we have to have a pause and a refresh and a reset. We're not who we were in our 40s. I'm
Mhm.
in my 50s now, right? I was maybe less voicious in my 40s, but now in 50, I'm saying whatever comes to mind. I'm trying to make sure I curb it and pray about it first.
Yeah.
But I'm more bold and audacious about it, right? So the
Mhm.
Unstoppable Woman movement came about where I wanted women to believe in themselves, love themselves, trust themselves, and know that you have the power to continue moving no matter what, unable to stop. Like you are not going to stop as long as you trust yourself. As long as you believe in yourself is the biggest part, right? And as
Mhm.
long as you stand in faith knowing that God got your back.
So when you think about video as it relates to the movement and what you've been doing and how you've been showing up, what led you to start getting yourself on camera? What made you decide I'm going to turn this on and I'm going to start showing up on film? Because a lot of people choose not to do that, Regina. I think you know that.
Yeah. I think that for me, if you remember back in the day, Periscope,
Mhm.
right?
Oh,
Like
way
Periscope was
back.
kind of like that starter for
It
people
was.
getting before Facebook came live, right?
Yeah.
So I would be on Periscope, and Periscope necessarily wasn't you on video, right? But they could hear you talking and stuff, right? So it
Mhm.
allowed you to kind of hide in the background. But when Facebook launched, it allowed you to step into the spotlight.
Mhm.
And so for some, we are afraid of what that spotlight is, right? So much is given, much is required. But I encourage every woman, every man, turn on the spotlight. You deserve it. Why? Because your message, your story is something someone else needs for the courage to have their first step, right? The first
Mhm.
time you went live, Tanya, you encouraged somebody else to go live. Some of your followers believe, you know what? I wasn't going to go live, but if Tanya can do it, so can I. And so I believe just being able to say, you know what, I'm not going to be scared to turn on the camera because I was already stepping on stages in front of hundreds of people. So why
Mhm.
was the camera so intimidating? And that's
Mhm.
even for some people. They forget the people who are scared that are watching this right now, that are afraid to turn on the camera. Well, you stepped in a room at a conference or at an event or at church and you started talking. What's different?
Yeah.
Nothing, but that you're looking at the camera now. Use that
Mhm.
as the same example for where you are so that you can own your brilliance, own your greatness, and most importantly, be unstoppable.
I love that. I love that. And it's the transition from being on stage to being on camera. I always try to, I guess, help people do a deeper dive into what makes that different. The difference is that you just don't have that immediate interaction and reaction from folks because you can't see how they're perceiving you on the other side. Whereas you get kind of like that instant gratification from folks that are in a live studio audience or a space where you're
Yeah.
standing on stage. But there's so many similarities, you're right, to doing both of those things. So I want to talk about overcoming self doubt because we do know that people regardless of what we're saying right now and the fact that we're having this conversation and telling them that they can, we still know that a
Mhm,
lot of us struggle with self-doubt. So, what strategies do you recommend women use to overcome the challenge of that? And then I wanna go into a little bit about the whole imposter syndrome thing, because 'cause I'm curious. There's been this battle of those words as to whether or not it's a real thing versus it's a fake thing, and I wanna hear your
mhm.
opinion about that.
Well, I think for the most part, for self doubt is us not believing in ourselves. I think that's the biggest part. Us believing if we're equipped enough, if we are prepared enough. But I believe if God has called you, He has equipped you, He has prepared you, and He has positioned you. You just have to be willing to take that step. You just have to be willing to show up for yourself and for the people you are assigned to. uh, Self-doubt is never gonna go away because I think we begin to question ourselves. Even I have self-doubt sometimes. I have to say, "Girl, shake that off. You got this. Step into it and get it done.
Yeah.
It is okay." But what happens is self-doubt leads into perfectionism
Mhm.
where you think that you have to be a perfect where everything has to be perfect. That's really where self-doubt lies. And then you're looking at self-doubt as to whether someone else is going to like it or whether someone else is going to think it's good. Well, you always going to have some naysayers. So who really cares whether they do or don't? Is as long as you know it's your gift, it's your calling, it's your purpose, you ought to walk in it and not worry about what everybody else has to say because at the end of the day their validation is not what should move you forward, but you should be so afraid of not knowing what it could be like because you weren't willing to do it. That
Mhm.
should be the scariest part. That should be the biggest doubt is what will happen if I do not, because I never get
Yes.
to experience what it could have been because I doubt it right now, so you
Mm.
never get to experience that.
That's powerful. Yes, that is powerful. Look at all the things that you could miss out on. Look at all the people who you could fail to impact simply because you said no
Yes, and I
instead of
always say
saying
to the
maybe.
women I coach, yes, I say to the women I coach, just imagine if 10 years ago I didn't get myself together, then I wouldn't have been able to pour out and give that courage for you to be able to say, you know what? Because if he did it for her, he could surely do it for me, right?
Yes.
So I think we have to be able to trust ourselves, believe in ourselves, and the key thing is love ourselves.
Love ourselves. Yes. Yes, 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 yes. Okay. So, question about recognized as a leader in women's empowerment. You have been recognized in that way. A leader in so many other things too, Regina, because I studied. I went and I checked you out. How do you define, before we go into transformational leadership, because that's my next and close to last question, let me go back to that imposter syndrome thing for a minute, because we were talking about self doubt and you were talking about how, what if you didn't do the things that you were meant to do? What's your thought and your take on this whole idea of imposter syndrome? Is it a real thing? Is it not real? What do people need to do about this if they feel like they're facing or dealing with imposter syndrome?
I think that everyone needs to be careful about what you see in someone else. So, because they see that Tanya Smith is this amazing podcaster, this amazing videographer, this amazing person,
Mm.
learn from that, glean from that, but don't envy that. And so you become to step into imposter syndrome when you say, well, I want that or I should have that. Well, Tanya Smith's gifts is not Regina Robinson's purpose or my gift or my calling or my brilliance.
Yeah.
And so we have to be careful that we're not so busy watching everybody else that we miss the lane that we're supposed to drive in and that we're supposed to dominate in. And
Mhm.
that's when you slip into that imposter syndrome because if I am envying your gifts, I might miss out on mine and mine might be just greater than yours. But if I only focused on yours, I missed out on the greatness I was supposed to experience because I was only watching what you were doing. I wasn't
Yes.
focused on what I was supposed to be doing and what I was supposed to be able to make the impact and the assignment of because I'm so worried about what everybody else is doing and what everybody else thinks that you're supposed to do when
Mhm.
you're not connected and centered on what is it that I've been called and purposed to do, and let
Mhm.
me do just that. Now, of
Yes.
course, we have people who we look at as mentors and people who we look at as inspiration. But be careful that inspiration does not become your imposter syndrome, where you are trying to now be that person when you've been called to be who you are.
Mm. Okay. All right. All right. Look, so there's so many different things that I am just hearing from you about standing up and being someone who is a leader. Because that's pretty much what you're saying lead in your own lane, stop worrying about what other people are doing, and look at who you've been called to be and what your purpose is, designed to do. I love that you show up this way. It's interesting to me that you mentioned that you're over 50, and so am I. I've been over 50 for a minute now, for several minutes.
Mhm.
And things changed. I was getting ready to ask you a question about transformational leadership, but I have a different question that I think I want to head down for a little bit. And that is because I feel you're such an inspiration, and you don't know much about me and my background. And I don't know about how you grew up, Regina, but I do know this. I don't think that we were encouraged to be bold and to speak out and to show up in the way that we are showing up now. What do you think was the trigger? What was it that told you it's time for me to open my mouth and to do what I'm meant to do? It's time for me to show up as a lead in the play and not just be in the
Yeah.
background. What told you that? What gave you that moment?
And it's so funny that you say that because growing up, I remember being where my neighbors and family, well, people would say, they would call me Nosy Joe, right?
Oh,
Because I was in everything. I wanted to know what was going on, who was doing what, and who was not doing what.
mhm.
And I didn't shy in the background, right? But because of that, I started to say, well, maybe I do need to temper back and be less forward, right?
Mhm.
Or people will start to I always say we lose our confidence when we were on a playground in elementary or middle school, where some young girl who was jealous of what you looked like because the guys liked you and didn't like them made it try and seem like you were quote unquote not the pretty girl or not the cute girl. And they started saying the comments or starting the whole sticks and stones may break your bones, but names will never hurt you. That's a lie.
Yeah.
They do hurt. They do sting, right?
Mhm.
And so I believe that we have to be willing to have that transition moment, have that transformation moment to be able
Mhm.
to move in those different directions. And so for me, when I started, I found myself shying back. And I remember two separate occasions, two separate women didn't even know each other that knew me would say, I don't know what it is, but if you keep on showing up and dimming your light, I'm going to call you out. Like, I'm calling you out now. That to them was them calling me out. Like, how dare you dim your light so that somebody else can shine brighter than you?
Mhm.
No, that's not how that's done. You need to shine your own light, be unapologetic about who you are. Because I used to dim my lights and be in the background, like, okay, I'll let everybody else shine because I didn't want to outshine anyone else. But God has to, and them two women, and God had to say, okay, even for speaking on stage, I would go and I'll be like, okay, I don't want to do too well because I don't want to do better than the people who came before me or the people who comes after me. And God was like, okay, the same way I put you up there, I will sit you down and never put you on another stage. And I'm like, ooh, okay. Let me get myself together and show up like I'm supposed to show up. And for
Yeah.
me, that was a lesson to say, okay, you know what? Stop dimming your lights. If somebody else can't function with your shine, that's not your problem. I
That's
I
on
my
them.
I am always encouraging them to shine at your
Mhm.
own light, at your own pace, at your own brightness. I don't
Mhm.
ever want anyone as a leader to think you have to shine like I shine because you are not me and I'm not you. And I want people to be their own individual selves. There's enough people out here trying to make people think they're supposed to be copycats. Well, you should not. You should be your own individual self because
Mhm.
God can only reward you for who you are, not who you pretend to be.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, it's amazing that we do have those people who speak into our souls and speak life into the purpose that we know we were meant to somewhere in the back of our mind, we know, but we don't
Yeah.
show up until that person, that nudge, that thing, just kind of knocks us into where we're supposed to be. So I'm
Mhm.
so glad that someone showed up for you, Regina, and said, "Hey, I'm gonna call you out."
"Are you out, girl? Like, stop
I'ma
it."
call
She was like, "Stop." She's like, "If you don't stop dimming your light," I was like, "Okay."
Oh, I love it. And how do you show up now? Okay, I'm gonna show your LinkedIn profile, but I know you're showing up now on camera in kind of a consistent way. So where do people find you? Not just on camera, but in all the spaces. I'm gonna show your LinkedIn. And I know at Regina Robinson Speaks on all the socials. Are there some socials that you tend to hang out more in?
I hang out on all of them, but I'm on Facebook and probably LinkedIn the most, but I do hang out on Instagram too, and my YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, everything across the board is Regina Robinson Speaks. And then, of course, my website is reginarobinson.speaks.com, which will be launching this Friday. Yay!
Yay. Yay. And you know what? So we'll definitely have to showcase because by the time we launch or produce this particular episode, it should be up and running. So I'm
Live.
excited to see it live. That's awesome. All right. I love it. Here's one thing I'm going to do really quickly here. There's one more question.
Okay.
I ask all my guests this, and I didn't write it down, but I just remembered that I need to ask it. What is one way that you feel like you have become unmuted since you made it into midlife?
Wow. I think for me, I've become unmuted in my traveling, right? I am unmuted about jumping planes, okay? I am
What?
unmuted about traveling around the world. Literally last year, I want to say I became unmuted on December 8th of 2025. No, what year are we in? 2024? Yeah, I get
2025
the years
now.
mixed up.
Mhm.
2024, December 8th, I jumped a plane and went to Bali, Indonesia for 30 days and did not come back to January the 8th. So I became unmuted when I booked that flight and jumped that
Okay.
flight on December 8th. I was unmuted from that day forward. 'Cause that was, like, my complete like, I had already started traveling a lot. Cause I said, "Th in my 50s, I'm just gonna travel till I can't travel no more." But
Yes.
for me, that was even a different level of
Mhm.
saying, "Okay, you know what? I just wanna pause. I just wanna refresh. I just wanna love on me. I wanna do whatever I wanna do. If I don't wanna do anything, I don't have to do anything." And it was the most beautiful 30-day experience ever.
That is
And so,
awesome.
yes, that's when I became unmuted.
Very nice. I love the story, and thank you so much for sharing that, Regina. Oh my goodness, y'all. Look, Midlife Unmuted is a podcast where seasoned entrepreneurs and creators over 40 share how they've used video podcasts, live streams, and other on camera content, but also we're unmuting just by taking the gloves off and apparently jumping out of planes.
No,
So,
not jumping out, jumping on them.
oh, jumping on the plane. Okay. Cause I was
Yes.
like, did she
No,
skydive
not
too?
jumping out. No, 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 no.
Okay. My daughter's a skydiver, so she
Woo!
loves to do that, but it's not one thing that I
Yeah,
wanna be
it's not on
unmuted
my
about.
bucket list. No, I'm not gonna unmute in that area.
But going to Bali for 30 days, that's
Yeah,
amazing. So very nice, and I'm just so happy that you had a chance to create that experience and can't wait to hear more about your future experiences as well as your new website that's gonna be coming up really soon.
yeah.
So, looking forward to staying connected, Regina. Thank you again for showing up for us and talking about being unmuted.
Thank you.